All right, I think we've got a good quorum. We've got about 30 people on, so that's fantastic. So I guess we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Today our speaker is Craig Hensley. I'll let him introduce himself and start whenever he's ready.
All righty, here we go. Everybody see the screen okay?
Yep.
All righty. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you all this morning. My name is Craig Hensley. I'm one of 2 Texas Nature Trackers biologists with Texas Parks and Wildlife. And as the title of this presentation obviously shows, we're going to talk citizen science. We're also going to talk iNaturalist. I'm scheduled to speak for 2 hours, but I also noticed that there's a plant sale somewhere. And as somebody who grows native plants and tries to get them out for plant sales, I will endeavor to not go over so you can still have a chance to go buy some if that's what you're wanting to do. So what we're going to try to do today is cover quite a bit of information. If you have questions, I think probably the easiest thing to do is to put them in the chat, and then we'll address those towards the end of the presentation. Simply not to, so that we don't go over our targeted time and then kind of disrupt the flow of the presentation as well. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started, jump right into it. I am part of the Texas Nature Trackers program, as I mentioned. We are part of the Wildlife Diversity Program, which includes our Community Stewardship and Engagement Program, the Non-Game and Rare Species Program, the License and Permitting Specialists, and the Urban Wildlife Technical Guidance Program. Lots of fancy titles there, isn't it? Of course, we're with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Our program, the Community Stewardship and Engagement, our goal is to engage citizen scientists across the state of Texas to help with the, not only to help them learn more about the flora and fauna of the state of Texas, but then also to help us document the flora and fauna of Texas to get a better understanding of what's out there and where they are, so that we can practice better conservation with that extra and important knowledge. Our 2 team members are you see right there. Obviously, there's one that you recognize based on the screen. And then my colleague, Wendy Anderson, joined the program a few months ago. She's excellent. If you ever get a chance to attend one of her sessions or work with her, please do. She's awesome. And I'm really pleased that she's part of our very small team that we have here. So our program basically, again, goes out to the community at large. We use the tool iNaturalist as a kind of a hook to get people engaged in going out and exploring nature. Hopefully what it does is it allows those folks to learn more about the natural world around them while collecting data that we can then tap into through iNaturalist. The idea is to get that data specifically out to the research and conservation community. So part of it is to recruit people, and then part of it is to mine that data to try to get information so that those biologists and people on the ground can do a better job of management. We do that by creating what are called iNaturalist projects. We have 12 that are currently on our webpage, although not all of them are active just yet or right now, or are being wrapped up. Some of them are. And our focus is on species of greatest conservation need, or our priority species. The idea is to get the information about those species and also rare plant communities into what's known as the Texas Natural Diversity Database, which is a publicly accessible database showing where our rare species are. So for conservation planning, for development planning, for putting in roads, things like that, the more information we have about where those unusual or rare plants and animals are, that will help us mitigate losses of those species of greatest conservation need. So my question for you is, what is a species of greatest conservation need? So in your, I'm going to break my rule I just created. In the chat, I'm going to open up my chat here. Tell me if you know or think of a species that might be an SGCN. So if you have any thoughts about that, go ahead. The Houston toad is a classic example. from your neck of the woods for sure. The red cockaded woodpecker is certainly. That's another great one. Green anole, not the green anole. The green anole is doing just fine, I believe. So that's not one. But good try, though. Good try. I see somebody agrees with the red cockaded. So that's a good start. That's a good start. Those are a couple of good examples. In fact, there are over 1,200 species of greatest conservation need in the state of Texas. But a species of greatest conservation need defined is a native plant or animal that is declining or rare and in need of attention to recover or to prevent, not present, prevent the need to list under state or federal regulation. And so here's a few examples. You've got the Houston toad over here. We've got the towbush cactus that you find only in the hill country. We've got, unfortunately, a lot of different kinds of mussels are being declared as SGCN due to the invasion of other smaller invasive mussels. The Texas horned lizard, the ocelot, and of course the whooping crane are classic examples of that. To find out where you have in your area, you can always go to type in TPWD, species of greatest conservation need. It'll take you to a page that provides the list of all of those species. That list is currently awaiting approval for an update from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So some of those species will change. And that's an important consideration to keep in mind, is that is a dynamic list. As we gain more information about species, if we are able to be confident in the fact that they're doing okay, we can actually remove those species from the list and focus our attention on others that do need more help. So it is not a list that is one and done and stays there forever. Our taxobiologists work very hard to make sure that we're putting out the best information with the best understanding. So let's talk citizen science, because citizen science has a lot to do with what we understand of our SGCN and other species. And in the best cases, as was written in the book Citizen Science, Public Participation in Environmental Research, Environment Research, in the best cases, citizen science blurs the distinction between scientists and non-professional participants, while at the same time maintaining rigorous scientific approaches to understanding processes and solving problems that neither group can solve on its own. And we're finding that more and more people are engaging in citizen science. And the best news besides that is that the scientific community is beginning to have a much stronger relationship with citizen science and the data that citizen scientists collect. There was a time not that long ago that it was suspect, and biologists doubted that citizen scientists could do the same level of work that they could. That has largely changed. I wouldn't say that it's completely gone, those feelings, but it's certainly way better than it used to be. So what does citizen science mean to you? And have you or are you participating in any citizen science examples right now? If you are, or if you if you want to give me an idea of what it means to you, provide an example in the chat. Oh yeah, Michael Horntoad, yep, and the salamander is also SGCN, by the way. So are any of you doing anything currently? eBird, very good. Yeah, eBird is a huge citizen science effort. INAT and eBird, very good. Doing riparian assessment of Panther Creek and on a semi-annual basis, very good. ID of invasives and INAT, feeder watch, bat monitoring, very good. Excellent. Those are all great ideas and efforts. Using an app to identify plant species. Okay. Very good. All right. That's a great start for you all. Okay. So citizen science defined. In 2014, the term was actually added to the Oxford English Dictionary, and it's defined as work undertaken by members of the general public in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists with scientific institutions. And that giant manual you have, the Texas Master Naturalist Manual, defines it as in the engagement of amateur naturalists in scientific investigations. There have been citizen scientists, whether they were called that or not, throughout history. Some of these amateur scientists or amateur naturalists have been making all kinds of contributions, and those include these three individuals that had a huge influence in Texas: Lindheimer, Engelmann, and Berlandier. And in fact, if you were to let me go back one thing here. If you were to look at the names of a lot of plants, you would find their names attached either in the scientific aspect of it or in the common name. So I'm sure some of you have run across them without question if you've done anything with plants in Texas. And there are, of course, some other examples, everybody from William Herschel to John James Audubon to some degree, and Mary Annings, who was an early dinosaur hunter in Europe, in England, and had all kinds of discoveries. And even more recently, we had the Hearts in the Ice program, where people went up for literally a year just to do all kinds of citizen science projects over the course of a year in the Arctic. And then we have Inez Mejia, who was died in 1938, but as a 40-year-old, she became involved with a nature organization, the Sierra Club, I believe, and went on to discover more than 500 plants, native plants in Mexico and South America and the United States, and became quite a famous botanist. And it got a start from, from a path that most people start when they go to college. So pretty amazing. So there are different levels of engagement. The primary one that most of us participate in is called contributory. And this is the traditional effort where people are collecting data and submitting data under the quote unquote gentle supervision of the sponsoring organization, such as National Audubon or Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So for example, eBird would be one of those. Takes advantage of a person's interest in a subject and desire to keep tabs on what they observe. For example, again, eBird. I remember back in the day when I was a young bird watcher, we all had our little notepads and we kept notes, or we kept notes in our field guide. But that information was our information, but it wasn't necessarily anybody else's. So now with eBird, when we make our list, we don't have to carry that around with a pencil and record everything. We can do it on an app and then on our phone, and then that data immediately goes in and can be used for all kinds of conservation related efforts. And then, of course, that also takes advantage of the altruistic intentions of people to contribute data while learning more about their hobbies or passions. So these have been great tools that have been very valuable. We're going to talk about them and some others today as well. So the other type is collaborative. And this is where it's a little bit more, it requires a little bit more involvement by the volunteers or the citizen scientists. In those cases, they may assist with data analysis. They may be helping with project design and creating protocols, and then conducting individual or group research using the scientific methods. So, for example, a good example that I'll be talking about that some of your chapter members have signed up for is our new BAT project, which is a bat acoustic monitoring project that we're rolling out across the state of Texas through the TNT program. And that is involving master naturalists that sign up to either be the chapter coordinator or the deployment people that put out the detectors on the landscape in specific locations, and then the data analysts who will actually get trained up to review all of the data on bat acoustics that we are sorely lacking in the state of Texas in a broad scale. And that will, this first year of this project is going to get everybody more deeply involved, assist with a data analysis, and also helping with the project design and creating protocols. So all of those collaborative methodologies are going to be employed with this particular project. And I'll talk more about that in detail in just a little bit. So benefits of citizen science. First of all, research goals can be enhanced and achieved through crowdsourced collection. One example is this eastern spotted skunk. Several years ago, a university decided to try to get a better understanding of spotted skunk distribution. Spotted skunks are mesopredators, kind of medium-sized predators, very secretive, nocturnal, hard to get an assessment on. So they put out in 10 counties, they put out camera traps and track plates and live traps. And over the course of 8,000 device nights, they got only 12 detections in just 4 of those 10 counties. And that's 1 skunk per 672 device nights. So while they collected a little bit of data, it's a very small bit of data through the standard or traditional research efforts. But at the same time, they also did a call out to the general public, literally put out a wanted poster for people to document or record or offer up photographs or other evidence that they might have of spotted skunks that they've run across the general public. They got 24 more confirmed eastern spotted skunk records in 21 counties instead of just the 4 that they were able to, 4 out of 10 they were able to do with their standard research equipment. And 6 of those county records were brand new for that particular county. So all in all, they were able to gain a lot of extra information from using crowdsourced or citizen science data. So what is one way that citizen science might positively impact education? I'm going to go ahead and reopen the chat and see if any of you want to offer up anything there. So what is one way citizen science might positively impact conservation? If you have an answer or a thought, go ahead and put it in the chat. Yep, more data about the locations of SGCNs, help estimate ranges. Yep. Provide a baseline to start a study. That's very good. All of those things are good. Public outreach. People care more about the world about them. They're involved. That's really some of the biggest impact that we can have, is if we can engage the public. We can, as Natalie says, increase awareness, which then brings care and concern, and then hopefully engagement. So all of those are very good. Good answers. Good answers, everybody. All right. So more benefits of citizen science, and just in kind of generic terms, it does draw people outdoors to explore their surroundings, hopefully igniting their scientific curiosity about their home place or creating a sense of place, a term that was coined by David Sobel. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things that we can do in your efforts as citizens, as master naturalists, is get people to actually understand what's around them, where they live. I know when I was a young person in school and elsewhere, they always talked about I grew up in Iowa, surrounded by corn and soybean fields and pastures with cows or pigs. But we always learned about rainforests, and we learned about mountains and other parts of the world and other continents, and that was all great and good. But the thing that I think was failed back then, for the most part, is we never learned, or were never taught about what was around our immediate area, unless we had a parent or a grandparent that fished or hunted or had an interest in the outdoors and took us under their wing. So in general, most of us grew up not really understanding anything about what was around us. And I think even today, I think people are often surprised at what's around them once they are exposed to that. So this citizen science effort can really open a lot of eyes and doors to a better understanding of nature. It increases public's ability to think critically and improve scientific skills and understanding of the scientific method. Hopefully, it helps address the erosion of trust in science currently plaguing our society. And we see that all over the place. Science is a valuable tool that unfortunately is being undermined by a lot of folks these days. We hopefully can bring together diverse groups to take on serious environmental issues that impact all of us, regardless of ideology or politics. And I think that's another important thing that needs to happen in, these days. And it also provides data collection that simply is not possible with the current number of scientists. So Texas Parks and Wildlife has a biologist for every county in the state. That's one human being trying to look over and see and understand what's going on with all the natural resources of that particular county. And that's simply not possible to be able to do that as one human. So that's where if the community, the greater community, can become engaged, whether it's through Texas Master Naturalists or native plant societies, or just getting the general public to engage in different activities, can be a big valuable resource. So I want to talk about a lot of our citizen science projects in terms of nature relate to birds and to butterflies. And so that's where I'm going to focus some of my attention, a good chunk of my attention today, and review with you some of these projects. Some of these you may have heard of, and that's great. And some of you may not have heard of, but all of them can be participated in. And I know, I've always said that if everybody was a bird watcher, this would be a much better world that we live in. And so I still advocate that everybody should be a bird watcher, because it's a great activity to get outside and relax and enjoy the beauty that is out there, whether it's the eastern bluebird or the vermilion flycatcher or so many other species that we have here, we're fortunate enough to have here in Texas. So first of all, the first one I'll mention is the longest running citizen science project in the United States. This is National Audubon's Christmas bird count. It was initiated back in 1900 by Frank Chapman, who was encouraging people to go to the field to count birds instead of hunt them, because back then anything was hunted. And this was a way to kind of switch gears away from shooting all the raptors to maybe counting all the raptors and beginning to understand that that they actually have an important role to play. So it's held each year between December 14th and January 5th. And it is basically what you have is a count circle, about a 25-mile count circle, and people gather up and they break into teams and they go out and they count the birds in their particular area, and then you compile all of that data. And the good news about this is that that data combined over a long period of time gives us an idea of changes of populations of birds over a long period of time. And that is one of the key things about understanding the natural world, is that we can't go out and do a one-year study and go, okay, we know everything we need to know. There's no way. That's just a blip in time. It's like a photograph, and you can learn something from a photograph. You can learn a lot of things from a photograph, but you can't understand population trends and how they're being influenced by what we do here on Earth without long-term study. So these data were used in Audubon's 2014 climate change report. They were included in the North American Conservation Initiative State of Birds in 2009, and other reports that data is still being used today for more recent reports. But it's really a good way to get out and be with other people that enjoy birds. Is a good opportunity for newer birders to get out and learn more about birds from the experienced folks that participate. And it's just a great way to spend a day, I think, in the wintertime. There's also Cornell Labs Project Feeder Watch. This is a project that was actually started in Ontario in the mid-1970s. Cornell began it in the United States in 1997-98, the winter of. Annually, more than 20,000 people participate between November and April. And what's really kind of neat about this is that you can do it from the comfort of your own home, or maybe you volunteer at a nature center that has a bird feeding station. You go out and they have simple protocols that you follow. You contribute as much data as you can, but you're not required to do it constantly. Now you can actually enter all the data on an app on the phone, so you don't even have to turn in paper records, which is pretty cool. And this data is used in determining long-term trends in bird distribution and abundance, just like Christmas count helps with understanding changes that may be occurring in winter ranges or eruption events, which means that there are certain birds that every once in a while they all leave their normal wintering territory and head south because they've run out of food. And an example of that would be the pine siskin that sometimes comes to Texas in huge numbers. Most years we never see, we see only a handful of them, but that gives us a better understanding of what's going on there. So lots and lots of good reasons for that. And it's, again, an easy thing to participate in from the comfort of your own home. There's also, that happened back in February, the Great Backyard Bird Count. This is a joint venture between Cornell, Audubon, and Birds Canada. Takes place over a 4-day weekend in February, where people just count all the birds that they can see in their backyard, and gives a good indication of what's happening, kind of a snapshot, kind of like City Nature Challenge does with iNaturalist. It gives you kind of a 4-day snapshot of what's going on in the natural world and tries to engage people in that effort. And this was actually, when it was created, it became the first online community or citizen science project that's all done online. So pretty amazing. And there's great resources with this, so you can learn a lot. Then, of course, there's eBird that I'm guessing a lot of you already know about or perhaps use. Began about 20 years ago, somewhere around 20 years ago, to collect this bird watching data. And so not only do the researchers get all kinds of data, over 100 million bird sightings per year that they can put to use, it gives us bird watchers a place to store all our data without having to have notebooks laying all over the place. And we can access that data from the web page or even online on our app or phone app. It's a great, great tool. And of course, what this data does, among other things, it creates distributional models. It tracks migration in real time. It collects year-round distributional data to track status and trends. So this information, if you go to their the eBird website, you can learn a great deal about what's going on in birds in the world. And I would really encourage you to do that if this is something that's up your tree. There is also, they show maps that show the migration based on observations of people using eBird. And I think this will play if you watch the map there. So there's your migration model that was created. You can see how the yellow warbler migrates has migrated down to South America, Central America. Let me play it one. Whoops, let me go back one time. Let's see here. Let's go back and see if I can play it again. And I may not be able to. We'll see. There it is. So you can see this is their wintering range where they were all winter. Whoops, it's just not going to do it for me. But hopefully you got to see that and how the maps changed as the birds migrate back and forth. Really a really fun tool to play with, unless it's in a PowerPoint presentation. But I would encourage you to go do that. Another project that people participate in is called Nest Watch. And this is another great opportunity to get out. And if you're putting up bluebird boxes or wood duck boxes, whatever it happens to be, why not monitor them? Just putting them out on the landscape and leave them alone. A lot of times they become havens for wasps or house sparrows. But by doing this, you can enter the data, and you can enter it on the computer. You collect it when you go out in the field. It's a great opportunity to get outside. And when I was when I was a young adult, I participated in a Nest Watch program in the state of Iowa. But instead of any kind of online thing, because it didn't exist back in the early 80s, we had a postcard, and you'd fill out the postcard over time, and then you'd have to mail the postcard off, and they would compile all that data. Now it's online, and one of the neat things about this particular effort is that there is so much information about these birds that use nest boxes, or just birds in general, because not all of them use nest boxes. You can learn a ton about the nesting biology of these birds. So it's a great resource, as well as an opportunity to participate in citizen science. And then if you really want to get crazy with birds, you can participate in the North American Breeding Bird Survey, which is sponsored by the USGS. And this is a much more involved one-day survey. It was initiated in 1966 to track status and trends of North American bird populations. And notice this is for breeding birds. A lot of the other things that we talked about are over the winter course of the winter. This is for breeding bird populations, and it began as a result of what happened when the spraying of DDT was killing millions and millions of songbirds and other birds across the United States. And basically what it is they selected designated 24.5 mile routes, driving routes, where you stop along that route every 0.5 or half mile. You count birds for 3 minutes, and then you move to the next half mile, and you do that 50 times. The count period is between mid-May through late June, and it varies in Texas because we're such a huge state, east to west, north to south. A lot of the routes are taken because it's a really valuable project, and a lot of people like to participate. But there are some routes out there that are still available. The data is used to assess bird conservation needs and priorities. And a lot of that data is used to decide, is a breeding bird actually increasing? Is it staying the same? Is it stable? Or is it actually decreasing? And because you have such a large concentration of data over a long period of time, we can get those trends and make better decisions, so we're not just guessing as to what's happening. So now let's talk citizen science and monarchs. That's enough birds for now. But there are other things out there. Just so you know, I'm hitting the tip of the iceberg here in terms of efforts and potential projects you can become involved with. So when it comes to monarchs, of course, are kind of an iconic butterfly. They are, most of the general public knows what a monarch is, whereas they may not know what a tiger swallowtail is, for example. And so, and because the monarch is a migratory species, it connects Canada to the United States to Mexico. So it's an international insect. And again, a very well-known one, and there's lots of efforts to try to better understand what's going on with them. And it kind of got started with, in some ways, with Fred and Nora Urquhart. They were researchers in Canada that had been interested in monarch butterflies for a long time, and they were trying to figure out they knew that the monarchs left Canada, and they knew that they migrated through the United States. They knew that a lot of them ended up in Texas, but from there, they didn't know where they went because eventually they disappeared from Texas in the fall. And so they start putting these tags. You can see this tag right here that was used, and they put out a call. And remember, this is before the internet. So that had to be done through letters, and it had to be done through newspapers and television appearances and those kinds of things. Which all seem for a lot of people antiquated now, but that is the way it was. And they were asking people if they saw one of these tags to report it back to them. And of course, that was done by mail. Pretty what we might think is archaic now, but that was how it was done back then. Let me go back one more time just to kind of finish the story. It was in 1965 that they reached out to a couple in Mexico to ask them to watch for any locations where monarchs might be. And they discovered and I say discovered, they found where the monarchs were in the wintertime. And in 1966, I think it was, there was an iconic photo captured on the front of National Geographic of the lady researcher standing in amongst these millions of monarch butterflies. And of course, the people there that live there, they knew about them all the time. So when we say we discovered the winter home of the monarch butterfly, in a way we did because we didn't know, but there were people that had known about it for a long time, and they may have wondered, well, where do these butterflies go when they all left in the springtime? So it was kind of a interesting reciprocal sort of thing. There's also a project out there called Journey North. It's run out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and it's a citizen science related effort to track migration, to track seasonal changes in lots of different things, not just monarch butterflies, but certainly monarchs are one of the featured critters out there. They get more than 50,000 contributions per year, more than 60,000 sites. They track migration of birds, butterflies, flower phenology, which means when do the flowers begin to bloom, when they're done blooming, whale migration. It's a great website. If you've never explored it, I would strongly encourage you to do that. And this year in particular, when it comes to monarchs, I think it's even more important. This is Monarch Watch's winter 2023-24 report on monarch abundance at the reserves down in Mexico. And it's the second lowest number they've ever had. I've been down here in the Valley training folks on a monarch program with National Wildlife Federation this week. And then also we've been out looking for milkweeds and monarchs, and we have yet to see a monarch down here. We found a caterpillar at a nature center, and I'll be out today. In fact, the other folks I'm working with are out right this minute doing surveys looking for milkweeds and presence of monarch butterflies in one of their life stages. So, and where I live in Bernie, Texas, I've seen exactly two this spring, when I should have seen a lot more than that. So if you are interested in that, I would encourage you to check out Journey North. And if you do see a monarch, go ahead and report it. You don't have to have an account. You can go in and report it. It's very simple. Don't even have to have a photograph, just positive ID that that's what you saw. So here's how you would go about doing that. Again, here's one that here's what the record would look like. This was back in 2018 under first adult monarch sighted. I turned in that information, and obviously I was pretty excited about it when I did that. The map shows where those monarchs are being seen on a weekly basis, and you can watch a live map when you do that to see that. Then there's, of course, the University of Kansas Monarch Watch. This is a project where the biggest known thing that they do is the monarch tagging. So that monarch tagging that was done by the Urquharts all those years ago was picked up by the University of Kansas through Monarch Watch, and they issue out these tags to anybody that wants to participate. There is a cost to it. Not too much of a cost, but anybody can participate where you catch monarch butterflies, you put the tags, you record the data on the tag, when you caught it, where you caught it, you eventually turn that in. You can now do that through an app or through the internet and on a computer, and that helps them continue to understand the movement of monarch butterflies in the fall. So this is a fall activity. And plus the web page also has lots and lots of educational materials that you can access if you want to teach people about monarchs or have a monarch festival or whatever it might be. The great thing, again, anybody can do it. My friend Laird Ingham, who is a Texas master naturalist, got to a point where he was tagging 500 of them every year down in San Antonio. He's since moved back to Kansas, actually Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is. He's getting involved directly with Monarch Watch there. And again, even people like me can figure out how to catch a butterfly and put a tag on it. And just to kind of give you an idea about what's learned, here's one of the longest short-term flights of monarchs ever known. The monarch was tagged way up here in Cape May, New Jersey on October 9th, was recovered on October 12th of the same year in Harlem, Georgia. That's a long ways, 558 miles for a butterfly to travel in just a few days. So kind of shows you what they're capable of doing just by this kind of citizen science effort. And the largest migration was over 3,000 miles, tagged here in 2000, recovered that next spring down in Mexico for over 3,000 miles. So just amazing what these small butterflies can do. And it does work. I've tagged a lot of monarchs over the years, and here are examples of two that were actually found of mine. One was this back in the dark ages, but when I worked in Nebraska, I tagged one on the September 14th, 1997. It was recovered actually 2 years later. It had been laying on the ground, probably dead for that long, but in El Rosario, Mexico, 1,512 miles that it traveled. And another one that was retrieved I tagged in 2003, was retrieved in 2004, when I worked for the Missouri Department of Conservation in Blue Springs, and it had traveled 1,384 miles. So pretty impressive movements by these iconic butterflies. Monarch Watch also has monarch way stations where you plant milkweeds, you have to provide water, you provide nectar sources in terms of flowers, and they are all over the country. As of early January, there are over 46,000 of these. You can purchase the little sign here. I think it's $25 that shows that you are a monarch way station. And kind of for some people, especially if you live in an HOA, might be a good validation of why your yard doesn't look as green and lifeless as other yards in those HOAs. So something to keep in mind if you're trying to look for maybe a workaround if you're actually wanting some to attract pollinators and other wildlife to your yard. There's also the Monarch Larval Monitoring Project. In fact, when I'm done with this presentation today, I'm going to be going to a nature center here in the valley to try to document monarch eggs and larvae using the protocols of the Monarch Larval Monitoring Project. In fact, this is one of the programs that we train volunteers here in the valley on Thursday when we held our workshop through National Wildlife Federation. It's not their program, but we certainly are highly engaged in getting people out to do that. And you literally are recording the number of larvae, instar stages, chrysalis, and adults over the course of the breeding season. And down here in Texas, that's usually in the spring, starting somewhere around mid-March, going until you find the milkweeds have actually sneezed and gone back to the ground, and the monarchs have moved on to other states. So why monitor monarchs? First of all, the fact that they are migratory makes them fascinating creatures. There are all kinds of different research opportunities, all kinds of opportunities to engage the public. And monarchs, as they go, it's a great indicator of how our environment is doing. And we've seen some dramatic changes in monarch numbers over the last 20 years. Part of that is because of agricultural practices, the chemicals we put out on the landscape, things like that, habitat loss. And this is one of those species that, again, people are familiar with, and we can actually take advantage of that familiarity to learn more about these particular butterflies. And so for the Monarch Larval Monitoring Project, they have areas all over the country that are monitoring them. What's kind of interesting is the migration of monarchs through Texas kind of follows what the map shows in terms of the locations. There seems to be a gap right there through that part of Texas. West Texas doesn't have a lot of people, so you don't see too much monitoring. But it turns out there can be a lot of monarchs up in the Panhandle during migration and in spring as well. And then also down even in the Big Bend region. I've been surprised how many monarchs I've seen. It's the right time of year. So there's also another project that's involving monarchs that's really important, especially if you're around the Gulf Coast area. People use a lot of a plant called tropical milkweed, which is a non-native milkweed. It's a gorgeous plant, no doubt about it. But unfortunately, because it continues to grow because of our climate and is becoming an escaped kind of invasive in parts of the Gulf Coast area around Houston and elsewhere, there is a parasite that builds up on that plant over time, and that it's called OE. It has a big long name. I'm not going to try and pronounce it for you. But it is once it becomes very prevalent on these plants, when monarchs lay their eggs on those plants, the larvae actually ingest the spores. The parasite then grows. It negatively impacts the caterpillar. And it impacts the development of the chrysalis. It also impacts whether the adult comes out as normal and can fly or not fly. And it's becoming, in some parts of Texas, apparently a much greater problem in the Southeast. And so there's a big move to discourage the use of tropical milkweed and to use more native milkweeds, which actually die back and help alleviate that problem. But you can get these free kits from the University of Georgia and test for this OE parasite, send the results back to them, to see if how bad it is in different parts of the state. So something to keep in mind, a real important program. to monitor disease in monarchs. And then there's also just butterflies in general. There's the North American Butterfly Association's annual 4th of July butterfly count. I participate in this, I have for years. This is a 15-mile count circle, similar to the Christmas bird count, kind of modeled after that. And you go out and you count butterflies within the circle, and you can start your own circle. Create, if it's not interfering with any of the other circles around you. It is the largest known database of butterfly populations in North America, which is pretty impressive. It promotes butterfly awareness and conservation. And again, butterflies are more identifiable than, for example, bees are, for sure. And they're beautiful, and people recognize them easily as butterflies. And it's a great way to get out in the summertime and engage people for a day, having fun doing that. There's also a national phenology network that has all kinds of projects, citizen science projects that you can engage in or create through this USA NPN website. One that I participated in for a few years and helped get started just by promoting it through our program was the testing of or sampling of ash juniper trees for the phenology of when the cones open that released all the spores that create our nasal passages to jam up and cause all kinds of problems with pollen related diseases. And what they were trying to do was trying to figure out when are these spores being released over time, year after year. They're putting together a model, a predictive model, to try to give people better alerts as to when the season is coming, what they can expect on a regional and a local level. It's part of this research was being done through the University of Texas Medical Center, I believe. So it's kind of a fun project until I started becoming and I'd never been reactive to ash juniper's pollen until I did it for a few years. Shook a lot of trees, and now I'm a little more sensitive than I care to be. But it was a great project to help the medical application of that. So there are many projects on there you can participate in and check out. And then a new citizen science project that I wanted to alert you all to. Your chapter has several people that have already signed up for this particular project, but it's the Texas Nature Trackers acoustic monitoring project, bat acoustic monitoring project. We're using 2 types of detectors to put out on the landscape and designated sites, working with the North American Bat Monitoring Program, NA-BAT, to collect data. A lot of this data has not been collected in Texas, and so we're kind of playing catch up there. Our new bat biologist is behind it. We've got lots of effort. We've got equipment that we are getting ready to ship out to the chapters. We've had a couple of training sessions and meetings, and we're doing more of those throughout the spring and summer. And the idea is to collect this data to know where our bats are. They're going to be, right now there are, of the 30 or 31 species of bats in Texas, 22 of them are being designated as species of greatest conservation need. The tricolored bat you see on the right side there is actually being considered for listing by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The cave myotis, the one below that, is a bat that has disappeared from caves around the hill country entirely. Due to white nose syndrome, and that disease that came into the United States a few years ago has really wreaked havoc on bat populations. And so in Texas, with the most number of bat species here of anywhere in the United States, it's important we have a better understanding of where our bats are, where they're migrating through, those kinds of things. And again, this is being done. We're working with the protocols established by NA-BAT. And so those protocols are that you put out a detector on a Monday and you pick it up on a Friday, so you get 4 nights of data. We move those around through different cells, sampling cells across the state. And it's a very important project. And even they recognized in their manual that the success of NA-BAT will likely depend upon the use of citizen science volunteers. Again, our state has 1 bat biologist, and that's it. And with 31 species of bats and 22 of them being designated potentially as SGCN, there's a lot of work. And then you introduce a big disease like white nose syndrome, and there's a lot going on there, and it's a lot for one person. And that's where, again, citizen science can step up and really make contributions that one bat biologist can't possibly do on her own. And just to kind of show you the data deficiencies you have, this is a map of the distribution of the tricolored bat in the book Bats of Texas by Ammerman, Heiss, and Schmidley. So it's a bat that's distributed statewide. Those dots refer to actual physical records, and the rest is the grayed out areas where they're pretty sure they are. But if you look at the modeling on NA bat, here's the models for all the other distribution in the country, but notice most of Texas is not included because we simply don't have enough data for them to include us in that modeling effort. And with a species that's about to be potentially going to be listed, wouldn't it be nice to know how that is going to impact Texas? And to give you an idea, these are the individual cells that have been adopted for monitoring bats, and you can see there are lots of holes in the state, lots of work to be done to gather more information. And then these are that shows some of the species that have been collected, but again, not very many grid cells are out there in Texas that have been adopted yet, and there are literally thousands of them, and we're going to try to change that. The cells themselves kind of look like this. They're 10 by 10 kilometer cells with 4 quadrants. The idea is to get at least 2 monitors in each grit cell. And this is not just 1 year, but this is year after year. So this project is slated to be a long-term project. So master naturalists are going to potentially play a major role in helping us fill in the map, if you will, about bat distribution across Texas. These are the different detectors that are going to be used. We'll be mailing out to each participating chapter. To begin with, one of these mini bats and one of these audio moths. The master naturalists will program them, put them out on the landscape, move them around within the chapter over the course of a 2-month period of May to June. And then there will be that data will be compiled onto a server within Texas Parks and Wildlife that we've identified. And then there will be data analysts that are being trained up and will be trained up through Wildlife Acoustics company, and then also through our efforts to train everybody up so we can start to analyze that data and report out on that on an annual basis. This is how you deploy them. It's fairly simple. I guess you can even do it in your pajamas if you want to. This is my boss, Michelle Haggerty's family, deploying a couple out on a wildlife management area to test out the equipment to see how they're doing. So we've been starting to collect a little bit of data just to get an idea. Around water is a very valuable place because bats they have to drink. And so since water is a limiting factor in some parts of the state, it's a great source for collecting data. And then the software looks like this. It's called Kaleidoscope, and it can do cluster analysis. It can do auto ID for bats. And then the second part of that is the manual vetting by our trained volunteers that will be looking at the actual recordings to determine if, in fact, the identification is correct or not. And here's what we'll be studying. We'll be looking at the oscillogram or the spectrograms on the software from the recordings. We'll be looking at individual calls like what you see here to help determine what that bat might be. And this one is saying that it's an eastern red bat, Lazuris borealis, but a lot of those bat calls look just like that. So there's a lot to learn. It's not an easy thing to learn. The kilohertz range is over here on the right side, and you use that and some characteristics of that individual call to get a proper ID or attempt to get a proper ID. So we've already done our initial training on site online through our TMN Tuesday. That recording is on the TMN webpage, and you go to TMN, boy, I'll tell you what, TMN and TNT, I get confused. You go to the TMN website for TMN Tuesday. You can find that recording and listen to it. You can then sign up. There's a link there to sign up to participate in the project. And then in February, we've had and I have been away from my email for 3 days, but I've already signed up almost 400 volunteers across the state, and I think I've probably got another 30 or 40 signed up in the couple of days I've been gone since a meeting on Tuesday night with our chapter coordinators. And then again, we'll be mailing out equipment. We'll be getting more training out to the different volunteers. We'll have another meeting once the monitors are in the hands of the chapters. We'll do a training to get them to show how to program those, or not. It's not too hard to do. I mean, I figured it out, so that means that everybody should be able to figure it out. We'll deploy the detectors during the months of May and June. July and August, we'll retrieve the SD cards. We'll begin the analysis, and then hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to put out our first report. This first year is kind of a pilot. So as I mentioned to all of the chapter coordinators last week or earlier this week, what we're trying to do is use you all to that higher level of engagement to get people to say, here's what can we do to have the best procedures in place, so that the second year and years after that, we've got it down and we know what to do each year, and nobody has to have their hands held. It rolls on and continues to collect data. So there's going to be a lot of engagement by the volunteers that are interested in participating in this. So again, I've already talked about how this is going to be an important project, not only for collecting data, but also for the Texas Master Naturalist Program. I'm a big believer in the capacity of Master Naturalists, and this is an opportunity to do something on a statewide scale that can collect a lot of data that we simply right now today do not have. And it is going to be a long-term project. And this first year, again, will be kind of a pilot to make sure that we've got our best practices established for next year. Again, if you go to the TMN state web page, you go to TMN Tuesday, you'll find this link to register and sign up to participate. We do encourage you to watch the initial training so you get a better understanding of a lot more detail in that presentation that I just gave you about what's going to be happening. All right, so now let's talk citizen science. Let me take a drink first, because we're going to shift to iNaturalist. So just so that you understand that I just provided you the tip of the iceberg about different projects that are going to be happening and are ongoing by agencies all over the country, all over the world, that we can participate in as citizen scientists. And I will say something I haven't said. When you participate in citizen science and programs like the Texas Master Naturalist, it gives you this opportunity to learn so much more than you knew before. And the only way we've got a chance, I think, to really leave something behind for future generations when it comes to the natural world is we have got to engage ourselves, and we've got to engage others to learn about and care and then act on in behalf of the natural world, the very world that we all depend for clean water and clean air. And it doesn't take much of reading of any kind of newspaper or online or listening to the news to find out there's a lot of stuff going on that's having a negative impact. And we have an opportunity to try to alter some of those negative impacts, but we've got to engage not only ourselves, we've got to go beyond teaching the already converted, as I like to say, the people that have already bought and drank the Kool-Aid and love nature and all of that. We've got to get to those people that haven't had that opportunity to experience the natural world or understand how important it is. And what I've found over a 40-year career, is that when you do engage people, and they have fun doing it and fun learning about it, you start to get more recruits into the whole concept of the importance of nature and our health and the environmental health. So whatever you can do to do that as you continue this venture into Master Naturalists, I encourage you to do so. You're going to make a difference. So let's talk about iNaturalist now. So why iNaturalist? Well, first of all, iNaturalist, which by the way was not created by us, Texas Parks and Wildlife, but it emphasizes community engagement. Anybody can create an account. It doesn't cost anything. Everybody has a cell phone. You can go out and take pictures of the natural world. And the great thing is the artificial intelligence of iNaturalist will suggest what the heck that thing is. And I'm a big believer that how do you care about something if A, you don't know what it is, and B, you don't have any, way of finding out what it is. This gives you a way to accomplish both things. It's an open science platform, so everybody has access. It focuses on peer-to-peer collaboration. What I mean by that is that when you put something on iNaturalist, you're sharing it with all the other iNaturalist users out there in the world. And there's conversations that go on between those iNaturalist users to help with identifications, to have discussions. It's amazing what's going on out there in the iNaturalist world. It always also provides you the opportunity to better understand your local area, and then allow that information to help fit the larger picture of what's going on around the region and the state and the country and the globe. And also there's an organization called GBIF. Oops, let me go back. Which is the global database effort to try to document every species of plant and animal on the earth and other organisms that aren't. And from 2020 to 2023, the percent of records entered into GBIF compared to all other sources, these are the percentages that came from iNaturalist. And the only reason I didn't put birds on there is because of eBird. eBird, I think there's only like 11% of birds that come from iNaturalist, the rest primarily from eBird. But you can see when you talk about reptiles and amphibians and those things that don't have a big following, most of those records come from iNaturalist. That's a huge thing. And think about what that means before iNaturalist. That means that a lot of this data was not known to anybody except a few researchers out there. So this engagement tool to the entire population has provided vast quantities of data that we didn't otherwise have. Give you an idea, there are over 171 million and counting observations globally from almost 3 million observers across the globe. You can see that based on these countries, this orange, United States is pretty well represented, I'd say, in terms of users of iNaturalist. So in terms of the value of iNaturalist to Texans, provides a tool for identifying the natural world around them, provides Texans with motivation, hopefully, to learn more, leading to more engagement and interest in the natural world, as I mentioned before. It also helps them with a real way to help resource managers understand species distribution, thus aiding in conservation efforts. One of the things I hear and sometimes I feel is that you see everything that's going on and it's like, what can I as one human being do? This is one way you can contribute. You'll never know how much you contributed, but if you get out there and do it, eventually some of that data, even if it's not important for a species right now, just having those records and building up that database can be very valuable down the road, and again, in a long-term setting. And also just is a great way to engage and teach children and grandchildren about the diversity and importance of nature. We've got to connect. We've got to continue to connect young people to the natural world. But at the same time, we've got to connect their parents, because if their parents aren't interested, they're not going to share that with their kids. And then you're going to have a generation of kids that are not interested. And we all know that cell phones and social media and all of that seem to be the most important things to younger generations now, and even adults. This is a great way to take those two things and turn it around and turn it into an interest in the natural world. Here in Texas, just to give you an idea, we've had over 9 million observations through iNaturalist. And so the obvious question is, if we're getting that many observations here in Texas, why would agencies like Texas Parks and Wildlife not use this data to learn more about what's going on with the plants and animals of the state of Texas? And in fact, that's where the Texas Nature Trackers program and comes in to help with that. And then, of course, biologists all over the state now are using the data to better understand what's going on the landscape. So who else is using iNaturalist? Well, of course, that data is appearing in natural history books, like the WASP book that you see there. The researchers now, there's over 3,000 peer-reviewed papers, and this is a couple of years old, so it's possibly quite a lot more that are using iNaturalist data. Different national, state, and local agencies are using it. Conservation organizations are using the data and encouraging data collection through iNaturalist. It's a really powerful tool. And I know that I think it's iPhone or maybe it's both have come up with these things of what is it, and then you can share, you can take a picture of it on your phone, not using iNaturalist, and it'll tell you apparently what the plant or animal is. However, the difference is that information, while it's great for you, it's not doing anything for conservation efforts. And again, that's why, even though it's a great tool, and I'm not putting it down, iNaturalist is actually contributing that information for conservation instead of just personal identification. So just kind of keep that in mind as we move forward. So iNaturalist is, as they define it, an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. The two primary goals of the folks in California that invented this were to connect people to nature and to generate scientifically valuable biodiversity data from users' personal encounters with nature. And the fact that everybody has a cell phone glued to their hand these days, this was a great idea for accomplishing both of these things. And as you can see from the numbers, it's been highly successful and continues to be. So the basics of iNaturalist, the way it works, you download the app on your phone, you create an account, you go out and you take pictures of things, you share that with other iNaturalist users, discuss your findings. The app will make a suggestion for most things to at least help you with the ID process initially, but it creates this huge, enormous community of people that are engaged with one another and the natural world. You can create your accounts through both the phone app and the web page. The one thing I would tell you is that when you create an account through your phone, one of the things you cannot adjust through your creating the account on your phone, because the phone app is a data collection tool, is that the default setting for iNaturalist when you create an account is Hawaii time. So you have to go to the web page to change that to local time. And the reason that matters is that if you're doing timed events, for example, like BioBlitzes, if you're in Hawaii time, a lot of your data will not go into the project you're trying to get data into because the time scale's off. So I will show you somewhere in this presentation how to get to that to make that change. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. When I started this job position, I was not aware of that too and got caught on it in my first training, solo training. I didn't understand what was happening until I found out and discovered that. So when you go to make an observation, we're going to walk through this with you. This is what your phone's going to look like, or very similar to it. The iPhone on the left, the Android on the right. If you want to take a picture, you would, of course, click on the camera on the Android or the iPhone, click on the green circle with the plus sign on it, and that will open up options for you. There are 4 options on the iPhone shown here. There's a 5th option I'll explain here in a moment for the Android. But basically, you can use the camera to take the picture. You can go and select this choice and goes to your camera roll, find a picture in all of your photographs. You can upload those. You can also now record sound on both phones. And then also that 5th button I mentioned on the Android is if you have recorded sounds, just like you have pictures on your phone, you can go find a recorded sound, say from the app Merlin. You've recorded sounds, you can actually grab those sounds and put them in iNaturalist, as I understand it. So that can be real valuable with the Android. And then if you don't have anything, a physical record, a photograph or a recording, you can still document it. It will never become research grade because there's no evidence to actually look at by other users. But for example, if you are I keep track of the nature around my yard, and if something flies over and I can't get a picture of it, I can still put a record in there, so I at least have a record in my records, even though I know nobody's going to look at it to confirm it. So when you choose that, and you choose that, we're going to start with the camera, and you take a picture, and this is what your screen's going to look like. That plus sign, that square with the plus sign, if you want to take a second picture, you can do that. And you can take multiple pictures. You just keep adding, clicking on that, it opens up, goes back to your choices. You can add that. You can also, let's say you take a picture of a bird and then it's singing. You can take the picture of the bird, and then you can click on that, select record sound. You can record the sound. Now you've got a picture of the bird and the sound. So you can do that as much as you want per observation. And then the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to click on what did you see. Notice that it says view suggestions. And this is something that is often overlooked and forgot about. When it gives you those suggestions, that's exactly what they are. They are not necessarily definitive answers. However, iNaturalist is really good about giving you the correct answer with a lot of species photographs. It does not do that for sounds, only for photographs. But just remember that they're suggestions, okay? That's important. So when you click on that, you're going to get these suggestions. You're going to get, usually you'll get a fairly generic suggestion first, and then some specific species suggestions. You'll notice when you look at it, so if you know, you take a picture of this thing and it has an acorn in it, and you know what acorns come from oak trees, but you don't know what kind of oak tree, you can just choose oaks and move on from there. If you know it's a Texas live oak, you can do that. You can also use this information. You click on the eye here, and I believe it's this bar, this right here, to look at other photographs of that particular suggestion to see if they match what you have taken a picture of. You also notice it says visually similar, seen nearby. That seen nearby can be a clue that you're in the ballpark, so to speak, but then of course you'll see that other ones have as well. So again, you can select the more generic if you don't know for sure, or you can select the species that it is suggesting. And a lot of times selecting the top suggestion is actually the best choice. Because again, the artificial intelligence, the identification skills of the app are amazing. So once you do that, here we've got it's been done. Now we're going to look at, there's date and time. That's already time stamped through your phone. You don't have to do anything more with that. The next thing is the location. You'll notice the lat longitude for both of these observations are the same, but the accuracy is different and the actual location name is different. And those two things can be different in the same observation because of where the satellite is that picked it up. And you can for Texas Nature Trackers observations, we like the accuracy to be under 500 meters, and the closer you can get, the better. If you want to verify where that is because you're confused, that you can actually click on that. It'll open up a map. You can move that map around with your finger and thumb and get more accurate with the observation. You can then look at geo-privacy, or whether people can actually see your observation or not. The default is open where everybody can see the exact location, but you can also protect that location by clicking on obscured, which will draw a 22 by 22 kilometer box with a random spot in it or dot in it, point. Or you can pick private, and the average person out there on iNaturalist will not be able to see anything about the location of it. And that might be very valuable if you have a rare species or endangered species, or you're on your private property with that, and you want to share the information, but you don't necessarily want the public to know exactly where it is, so that there's no poaching or potential issues that might come up, and that can happen. The next thing is captive or cultivated. Basically, if you're out and about and you take a picture of a plant out in the wilderness, it's going to be a wild critter. You don't have to do anything here. But let's say you take a picture of something in somebody's garden that you're really fascinated by, then you would go ahead and click, yes, that is a cultivated thing. Even if it's a native plant, you still, if it's in a garden setting, you want to select cultivated. And then you can, the last thing is you're going to share it by clicking on share, or clicking on the check mark on the Android up there in the corner. The other thing I did want to mention that you see there is projects on the iPhone. That's where you can actually submit observations to projects that you have physically joined. If you don't do that, then there will be projects that might pick up your observation. You don't have to join them, do anything. If your observation is within a boundary and it's a taxa group that that project is looking for, they'll actually take your observation, pull it into their project as a new record. Now, to go back to that open obscure, this is one of the things that is the biggest stumbling block for some people. So I don't want people to know where these things are being found. This is where, again, you can protect that by selecting one of those three choices. And again, going back to projects, a little bit more detail. These projects up here that have the toggle switches, those are ones that you physically joined. You had to go to that project, say, yes, I want to join that project. And then when you go to submit, say that was a project, that was a photograph of an eagle nest. You would have to go here, hit that toggle to turn that green, and then that ID would go into that project. If you didn't do that, it wouldn't go into the project. So those kind of projects, which are known as traditional, are a little bit more complicated. We use those projects because it gives us more access to that hidden data. But you are agreeing by joining that project to release that hidden data to trusted users like our agency. The regular projects are these down here that don't require you to join them. They just grab them. The classic example is Texas Nature Challenge or a BioBlitz that you may participate in, that kind of thing. So something to keep in mind. Now, this is a photograph that some of you, maybe all of you, will recognize. So in terms of the chat, what I'd like to do is, what are you seeing there? What is that? What are those three creatures? So if you have an idea, thank you, Miranda, black vultures. Those are, in fact, black vultures. Now, when this observation was made, I do not know what the first choice was. I'm guessing it was black vulture. But just to kind of show you what can happen, other choices were black bear, included wild boar, American bison. So iNaturalist is good, but it isn't perfect in terms of identifying anything. And the black bear was obviously saying it is not me, the black bear. So just to show you that iNaturalist is not perfect, keep that in mind. All right, so now let's just very quickly go through the iNaturalist webpage. I've actually done a whole 2-hour trainings just on the webpage, so we will not use the next 2 hours to talk about it. We'll use the next few minutes. But I will say this, if you really want to explore iNaturalist, go to the webpage. The phone app is a data collection tool. You can access the web page through your web page or your like Google on your phone, but you can't access the web page through the app on your phone. So all of the really cool stuff that goes on with iNaturalist is on the web page. Trust me. So when you open up your account, this is what you're going to see on your page. You're going to have a bar up here that is more of the larger world community up here. You can explore different parts of the world. You can look at your observations. You can find other iNaturalist users under community or projects. You can help people identify their observations if you have skills in that. Through that link right there, it says identify. And under more is where you're going to find the help guide. And if you have questions, it's an excellent resource to go look at video tutorials, to look at these already pre-populated questions. And some of them are ones you may have. You can click on them and get the answers for that. There's also a forum, community forum, where you can ask questions of other iNaturalist users and get help with any questions you might have as well. So I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. Now, in terms of your actual data, you have all of these tabs right here that you can explore. This is obviously the profile page. You can put a description in here or not. It's up to you. You can find out who's following you. You can look at the number of observations you have, the number of species, your identifications, et cetera, et cetera. Now, remember I told you the time zone is off when you join, when you create an account, because it's Hawaii time. If you go to edit account settings and profile, under profile, when you collect or you select account, it will open up this page, and down here is where you see the time zone, and you have a drop down. You can collect, you can, for us here, you can select Central Time, and that puts you in the right time zone. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the three tabs that I use the most are observations, where I can go review my observations. This will take you to the same thing, and you can edit your observations directly. This calendar actually shows you when your observations were made on a calendar. Here's the ID link where all of the things that you helped others ID. You can create lists. You've got a journal there. And then over here are the projects. Those are projects that you can join. You can also search projects to look for other projects that you want to join. And then this add observations. So if you have a camera and a regular camera, you take pictures on it, you can take the SD card out, put it in your computer. You can then upload observations from that through that button right there. So when you look at your observations, they're presented in three different potential formats, and you can either do map, you can do a grid, which is this right here down in the lower part, or you can do a list. So you can review your observations either any of those ways. The thing about the maps thing is kind of interesting. It kind of shows you where, maybe if you use it a lot, where you travel to and spend your time. I remember I was doing a training one time, and I had just been up into see my daughter in the Boston area, and somebody on the presentation that I did not know said, "Hey, I see you've been in Boston recently." And I was like, "What?" And it was because they follow me, and they had seen where I'd put observations. So that was a little weird the first time I heard that, but yes, that is something to keep in mind on the map. Here's the page of observations. Really thing that I like to do, I love being able to sit down with my field guides and help others get their observations to what's known as research grade. And so you can actually search for different organisms and states and areas, so you can pick what you're expert on and help them ID. When it's been ID'd and confirmed, then it grays it out. You can move to the others. The one thing that I would recommend is, if you're not sure, don't do it. You don't want to get a bad reputation that you don't know what the heck you're talking about. You can either click the agree right away if you think you know for sure, or what I like to do is actually look at the photograph, though, because I want to make sure that what I'm looking at in the photograph is actually what it is. So keep that in mind as well. And then here's the project page. These are all projects that I've either created or been a part of, and they'll list those. And you can also search for projects by hitting all projects. By doing that, you can also create a project right there. And we don't have time to go into that today, but you can create your own project. And I'll show you some examples of projects here in a few minutes. All right. Now, so in terms of our program in iNaturalist, we decided to join the iNaturalist movement in 2013 and began hosting projects using the iNaturalist tools. And we have a web page that we monitor, and we are updating if it ever gets put up formally. We're still waiting for that. But under here, you can look for projects, which is right there. And these are the 12 projects that are on the website currently. We're keeping about 7 of those. Some of them we're closing out because they don't have any use anymore. We're kind of done with them, if you will. The data doesn't go away, but the project on the page will actually go away. But we collect a lot of data off of these projects. So the value of these projects, since initiation of Texas Nature Trackers iNaturalist projects, we've had over 1.5 million observations in the 12 projects through August of last year. Nearly 90,000 species of greatest conservation need observations have been made in those projects. And as in FY23 alone, we had 8,812 SGC observations of 239 species that were entered into our projects by people. And between 8,000 and 9,000 observations of those were SGC observations, reptiles and amphibians, that have now gone into the Texas Natural Diversity Database over the course of that project, which is very significant. So it provides a tool to engage Texans in directly supporting conservation efforts of the state's flora and fauna by documenting species presence. Now, keep in mind, every time you take a picture, you're creating a digital voucher for the presence of an organism. So iNaturalist does not tell you what's not there. It only tells you what is there. And then the goal of a lot of people with iNaturalist is to get their observation to research grade. And basically what that means is that something becomes research grade when 2/3 of the people referring to that observation agree with the identification. And you can see the proof of that, the 2/3 there on that green bar down below. And when it becomes research grade, researchers outside of iNaturalist can then kind of trust the ID and use it for research or conservation purposes, even though they're likely to go ahead and review it themselves. When we review observations for inclusion in the TXNDD, one of our first things is it research grade or not? If it is, then we can verify that it in fact is correct. And the other ones, if it's not, we may review it, or we may not if we don't have time. So we do use that as a check mark, if you will, in our vetting process. One of the nice things about iNaturalist is that it often, because the general public's out there more than seeing things that all the biologists can't possibly all see, we get interesting new results. So this is a traditional on the left, traditional range maps of the pronghorn. But if you look and where these observations of pronghorn have occurred in Texas, there are areas outside of the traditional known range maps, and these may be a little dated, but they can then be verified by going out and visiting these new sites to see that perhaps the pronghorn is actually expanding its range in Texas. And again, here's the records that we've entered, the 8,000 herp records to the TXNDD. I've even seen it used at a commission meeting where they were talking about extensions of the squirrel hunting season, and they were using iNaturalist records to look at distribution of the species across the state to see if there were population levels potentially where they could expand squirrel hunting opportunities. When Project Storm Uri hit a few years ago, people were calling TPWD about dead animals everywhere. We were able to stand up a project and invite people to add their observations about what was going on out there, and certainly a lot of those came in. The other thing to keep in mind is that this iNaturalist network of people really does magnify what our individual biologists can do out there. And so, for example, for 2020, the City Nature Challenge, just in the Houston-Galveston area, basically the statistics bore out that we had 84 citizen scientists to every one TPWD biologist. So when you think about that, that's pretty impactful in terms of the potential for gathering a lot more information than we could have otherwise. The other thing to keep in mind with iNaturalist is because it gets people out on the landscape, it also provides a record of where people are visiting. So in local conservation efforts, there are places where they set aside a little acreage, and they're not going to develop it. They create a county park or just a natural area. And then they wonder, well, is anybody visiting it? Could we sell it and make some money there, whatever? By using those iNaturalist records, not only do those agencies get an accounting of what species are there, they get an understanding of how many people find that to be a valuable place to go explore or hike or take pictures at. And it can help with that better understanding of those areas, and hopefully more conservation of those areas, and maybe development in terms of resources that the visiting public can take advantage of while they're bird blind or whatever it might be. And just to kind of show you the power of where you as master naturalists can have an influence, here are the species of greatest conservation need in Texas as of, pardon me, FY20. And here are all the chapters in the state. You can see there's a great deal of overlap. So we can learn a lot more if our master naturalists are out there documenting the natural world about our SGCNs. So there are lots of different kinds of projects. These 12 projects I mentioned, you do have to join the individual project by selecting on it. Then you have to select the project as you submit your observation, or after you submit your observation, go back and do that as course as well. Then there are general BioBlitz type projects, which are open to everyone. And the nice thing about this, like the Texas Pollinator BioBlitz, it's a statewide effort. You go out during October, back in 22, October 7th to October 23rd, you take a picture of a plant or a pollinator, and that observation was automatically uploaded into this particular project. You didn't have to do anything else to participate. You can also have, you can create taxa-specific collection projects. I've been involved with butterfly surveys at Guadalupe River State Park while I was a staff person there. And in the several years since I left that park, we continue to do these. We created a iNaturalist project. On the iNaturalist project, we're up to 90 species, but the good news about that is we have more than 4,700 actual photographic records of those species there. And so it's a way to track individual species. You can also create and document the flora and the fauna on your own property. We have a small house in Bernie, Texas. It's a 0.23 acres. And we've done a lot of restoration work, putting in native plants and getting rid of the exotics. And since we started that project, this is a little old. We just passed 600 species in that 0.23 acres, most of which is a house and a driveway and a porch and a garage and a storage shed. So it's amazing what you can find out about your own property by doing this. And it just gives me an idea. I can actually print out the data if I want to, if I need to show it to somebody. But it's kind of fun to track what's going on your own property using iNaturalist. And then you can also have site-specific collection projects. This is an example from Alamo area. Every class they have stands up a project at the location of where they do a lot of their field trips, and they can get practice and put in observations for that particular area each year, and that's one of their standing class projects that they have ongoing. So what iNaturalist does and doesn't do. First of all, iNaturalist measures species richness. What's there? It doesn't measure population numbers or health. It does not measure absence, as I mentioned before. And as I mentioned before, the app is simply a data collection tool. To explore and benefit from iNaturalist to the maximum, go to the web page for sure. Do want to mention City Nature Challenge. It's coming up from April 26th to the 29th. It's a Friday through Sunday where you can go out and document everything that's going on in the natural world in your area, if you're living in an area that has a participating county or city. And then what can you do to make a difference in your community through citizen science, just to kind of wrap these things up, and then we'll open it up for questions. First of all, educate yourself. That's why iNaturalist is such a powerful tool. Find your passion or passions in the nature realm. Explore your options. As you go through the training class, you're going to meet a lot of other master naturalists potentially. You're going to see the wide range of things that you can do, and go after those ones that you're really interested in. Network with others, whether it's master naturalists in your chapter, master naturalists in other chapters. I would always encourage master naturalists to attend the state meeting. There is a cost involved to it. There is no doubt about that, but it's a great way to interact with people from all over the state that share your love of the natural world. And then the other thing is just do something. Don't sit on the sidelines. The days of us sitting on the sidelines and saying, yeah, those people need to do that, those days are long past. In order for us to make an impact, a positive impact on nature and on our society, we have got to engage in positive steps so that we can make a positive difference in the world. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we should be doing, is having a positive, making a positive difference that betters the world in some way and also can enrich our lives. So these are my last slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. There is a voluntary survey that the Fish and Wildlife Service, who funds a lot of our work, needs to have to show that we're actually doing our thing and can continue to get support from them. So if you take that and just take your cell phone, and hopefully it will work on your computer, take a picture of that. You can fill out the survey for us. That would be much appreciated. It takes less than a minute to do it. But it gives proof that we are out there talking conservation, talking to people, and helps validate some of the work that we're doing. So I'll hold that up there for a few more seconds to give you a chance to do that if you wish. It's certainly not required, but certainly we encourage you to do it. All right. So that is the last of the presentation. I know that was a lot to cover in a short period of time. I could have spent 2 hours just on iNaturalist, but I wanted to give you that overview without overwhelming you. But I hope that the presentation today has been valuable for you. This is my contact information, my work email, also my name on iNaturalist. With that, I will stop sharing, and if people have questions, I am happy to answer those and then let you get on with your day.
I was looking in the chat, and in that last section, there was a lot of discussion and questions about Seek and how
Yes,
Seek fits in.
yeah. So Seek is also was created by the folks that created iNaturalist. Seek was originally created for users under the age of 13 because it didn't require you to have an account. What they have discovered over the years is that about 3 times more people, I think it's at least 3 times more people, download Seek than they do iNaturalist, because the difference is, again, you don't have to have an account. You can point your phone at the object, and Seek will actually give you a suggested ID without ever taking a picture of it. So you can do that. The difference with Seek between that and iNaturalist is that if you're trying to educate yourself, Seek works great. If you want to make a contribution to conservation, Seek does not do that. Seek is a simpler identification tool. Now, if you have an iNaturalist account and you use Seek, you can, as long as you're logged into iNaturalist, you can take your Seek observations and directly upload them to iNaturalist in the Seek app. The other thing with Seek is that it's been gamified, and that's why they have the little challenges and stuff, because they're trying to engage younger people. The thing to keep in mind with Seek also is that if you take a picture of something and it tells you that what the species is or suggests it, it will save that observation. If it is only saying it's some kind of spider, that observation will not be saved. Whereas in iNaturalist, it'll still be saved even if it can't do a positive ID on it. So there's some limitations, but again, more people use it than use iNaturalist. But again, if you're trying to contribute, you need to have that iNaturalist account so you can actually upload that data and share it with others.
Great.
Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's perfect. Back in the first section, when you're talking about the milkweed, somebody suggested that the master gardeners say to cut down the milkweed that you were talking about when it's dormant, to help avoid the OE.
Yeah, so there are different schools of thought. I've been chastised for not being aggressive enough and telling people to rip it out of the ground. But I don't feel that I have that authority to tell you how to manage your property. However, that said, what I will say is that if you insist on growing it because you think you're helping the monarchs, you're probably not in the long run if OE is causing disease. If we're putting something out there on the landscape and it's hurting the species, why are we putting it out on the landscape? I mean, that's the logical question I would ask. So but here's the problem. I'm glad somebody asked this, because there is no simple answer here other than ripping it out of the ground. And again, I'm not going to be so pretentious as to say you must do that, or how dare you say that you care about monarch butterflies. I'm just not going to do it. So the thing to keep in mind is that if you really care about the monarchs, there are other native milkweeds that you can secure. Now, here's the problem with that. You can secure them, but it's not easy to find. And milkweeds are tough to grow. They really are hard to grow. So you can go to native plant sales, and some people may be raising native milkweeds, buy those, put those in your yard, and phase out your tropical milkweed. So that's one way to deal with that. Another way to deal with that is find out about that monarch health process and science project and participate in that. If you don't believe that's a problem and you have tropical milkweed, get the kit, catch some monarchs, test them, send the results in, find out on your own, and through that research effort, is it a problem where you live or not? Okay. But the bottom line is, and it's kind of like raising monarchs, it really doesn't do that much to help the population, to be honest with you. There's not a lot of scientific evidence, if any, out there that says that definitively is saving the monarch. I think that's more of a, I want to feel good kind of thing, and I like doing it. And again, I'm not going to tell you can't do it. There's no law saying you can't do it. But at the same time, do your research and find out if that really is making a difference or not, or is there other things you can spend more time concentrating on that actually does make a difference. But with tropical milkweed, if you insist on having it in your yard, when September comes around here in Texas, chop it back to the ground and keep it back to the ground until the monarchs have passed by, so they don't come out of reproductive diapause and just start laying eggs on what could potentially be a diseased plant. That will help eliminate that in your what you can do in your immediate grounds. The other danger of a plant like that is as it starts to escape into the wild, it could become an invasive species. We already know we've got invasive species all over Texas that we're dealing with that outcompete our native plants. And as a result of outcompeting our native plants, if our native plants go away, the native pollinators and other insects that depend upon those plants that have evolved with them now don't have the support mechanism to help them survive. So it becomes kind of a downward spiral. So, and I'm not going to say we're not going to cure the invasive plant issue either. We can cut invasive plants until the cows come home, and there are still going to be more invasive plants, or the ones we cut are still going to pop back up. So it's a really, these are difficult issues to deal with. But with tropical milkweed, the simple thing is, A, don't buy it, and B, don't plant it. But if you insist on it, then manage it for the benefit of monarchs instead of for the negative impacts it can have on monarchs. So again, I will probably get lambasted by somebody for not being more adamant. And frankly, whatever, I got a thick skin at this point in my life. So, but again, if you can find natives, go with the natives. That's the bottom line.
So a follow-up question is, somebody asked if you can test the milkweed plant for the OE, or do you have to
Yes,
test
you can.
butterflies?
Well, you have to, the way this is set up, as best I can tell, is you test the monarch. Because the spores get on their skin, on the monarchs. I suppose, I've not heard that I don't know. I've never heard in this project that they actually test the plants. So that's a really good question. But I do know. So what happens though is, so if a monarch that's infected, usually a female, comes and lays an egg on the plant, some of those spores can get onto the plant tissue. And the way it spreads is that the egg hatches and the caterpillar starts eating the leaves and eats those spores, and that's how they become infected. And then the organism itself can shed more spores, and it just becomes this. I'm not a I don't even know what that field of study is called, but I'm not an expert in it, so I don't want to overspeak. So I would encourage you, if you have questions about that, to go to Monarch Health and learn more about that, what they're trying to do and what you can do to participate and help. So I don't want to misspeak, I guess is what I'm saying.
Great. Anybody
That's
else
a
have
good
any
question.
questions from the field that weren't posted in the chat? Feel free to chime in.
I see that people are putting some links to different things. That's awesome. I
Yeah,
did put
we
my
have a few master gardeners in our class.
Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah.
I've got, I did put up my email. Somebody had asked to put that back on the screen, and then I'll also put my iNaturalist handle there. I just uploaded that. And I would encourage you, I saw somebody mistakenly said I'm some sort of rock star or something on YouTube or whatever. Thanks for the kind words, but I don't like to think that way. But we do have a Facebook page, and we have a Instagram page under Texas Nature Trackers, and we do post a lot of things there that teach people about the natural world. We encourage you to follow us on that, and we have a lot of fun putting stuff up. It's a different way of educating people, and we post things every week, both myself and Wendy. So we encourage
Yeah, I gave you a plug for the Texas Nature Trackers on Insta the other day.
Oh, very good.
I love it. I've followed several times, and it's just so much fun seeing you in action and all the different things that you guys pick up on that,
Well,
we wouldn't necessarily have picked up on. So it's great.
Well, we have a good time. We started doing all that live stuff when COVID hit because nobody could go anywhere. So we started in my backyard.
Yeah.
And my wife, who is a master naturalist, would hold the camera, and we didn't. I mean, I've done a lot of TV work and other jobs that I've had and stuff, so I'm used to being in front of a camera, but we didn't realize how popular it would become, and we've had a lot of fun with it. And we did have a post this winter, if I can brag on our program a little bit. We had a cold day, and it was on the weekend, and for those of you who know what the plant frostweed is, where the stems freeze when it's under 32, and the water in the base of the stems turns to ice almost instantly. It breaks the outer tissues of the plant, and you get these beautiful ice formations. That's why they call it frostweed. And so I did a 3-minute, 2-minute, 2.5-minute sort of thing explaining that, showing it. And that thing we ended up over 500,000 people saw that thing. So that was a shocker. The one thing I learned about this kind of stuff is that sometimes what you think are the simplest things, people just don't realize is going on out there. So it's kind of fun to share those things, and we'd like to get interaction with the folks that are out there following us. So anyway, we don't have an actual YouTube channel, but I will tell you that Texas Parks and Wildlife does have an educational YouTube channel that is fantastic. It has all kinds of great videos there. I just got done spending a weekend down on the Gulf Coast in the Corpus area, shooting a video with the gentleman that's in charge of that. And he'll be posting videos on, we focused on migratory birds and birds in general. And so I have not seen any of the results of that yet. So hopefully he got good enough material that he could actually put something together. So I would check out that TPWD's YouTube channel. It's definitely worth it. So.
Okay. Looks like.
I think we've got her taken care of, it looks like.
Yeah, somebody said the video you posted about the freezing water, that was on your Instagram?
That was on our Facebook page.
Facebook, okay.
So if you go to our Facebook page, there's a thing that says videos. You can go and watch all the different videos that we have there, and it's kind of you can learn some things. That's what we're trying to do, is educate folks. So.
All
But I
right.
want to thank everybody for hanging in there this morning with me, and I want to congratulate you all on joining the Master Naturalist program. I think you're going to find and meet a lot of really cool people over time and get to really do some positive things for your community and your local area, and get out there and do good for nature. It's a wonderful program, and thank you so much for taking that time to become a master naturalist. So
And thank you for coming and sharing all your knowledge with us. It was
you
really
betcha.
great. I always enjoy your presentations, like I said.
Well, thank you. And I am going to, I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm heading out to explore nature as soon as I get out of this
Yeah, I
hotel
hope you
room.
have a
So,
great day looking for butterflies.
oh, you know I will. You know
Question.
I will. Yes, yes, Ruth.
How do I find the Facebook page?
So if you do you have a Facebook account?
Yes.
Okay, so you go there and there's a search bar, type in Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Nature Trackers, and that should pull it up for you. And then
Okay,
you
so
can hit
it's
follow.
TPWD.
Yeah. Yeah, TPWD. Yep. All
Thank
righty.
you.
You betcha. Y'all take good care. Have a great rest of your weekend, and enjoy this beautiful weather we're having.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Take good
All right.
care, everybody.
For all the interns, the next class we're skipping next Saturday, and then we'll have a class on April 6th from 8 to 12 at the Sam Houston Montgomery campus. And it's forest ecology. So it's actually the forest ranger Connor that works, that's in charge of W.G. Jones Forest is going to do the first part. And then the second part is going to be, the second part is Donna Wood, who I believe is talking about the red cockaded woodpeckers that are in W.G. Jones. And there may be an opportunity for us to go to the forest and have a walk around and look for them. I know that when I was intern, that was one of the highlights of my training, was going out in there, and we found a nest, and she had this camera that's on a really long pole, and she stuck it into the hole in the tree, and she was super excited because she had seen an egg in there on the Thursday before. And then when she stuck the camera in, the egg was gone. So we were all like, oh no, what happened? And she said, well, it was probably a snake. And while we were doing that, all of a sudden there were 3 woodpeckers that came around, and they're yelling at us to get out of there, go away, leave them alone. So it was super exciting because we got to see 3 of the cockaded woodpeckers in the forest. And then sadly there was no egg, but maybe we'll see them this time with her cool camera. So hopefully that'll be an opportunity we can do at the end of the class. So I'll see you guys 2 weeks. Have a good day.